Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. In this video, we'll look at how to pronounce contractions for the word would. And we'll also talk about why you would want to use contractions rather than using the full form of these verbs. So first of all, I notice that many non-native speakers tend to avoid using contractions. Sometimes I think it's because it's challenging to know how to pronounce them or to feel accurate in using them. And I encourage you to learn and use contractions because native speakers almost always contract whenever possible, particularly in conversational speech and when we're using these verbs as helping verbs. If I'm saying I would by itself, then I would say I would. Otherwise, I'd go there, I'd have to think about it. I'm almost always going to say I'd. If I were to say I would like to think about it, I would have to think about it, it changes the meaning somewhat in that it puts unnecessary stress or extra stress on the word would. So for ordinary, regular use, try to always use the contracted form. So in order to do that, let's look at how we pronounce these words so that you feel comfortable using them. The chart that we'll be looking at today goes down from the words. So if you think about I would, that's pronounced, that's contracted as I'd, and it sounds the same as I'd, as in she eyed the cookies. She eyed them. So sometimes rewriting and respelling the contraction in a way that makes sense so you know what sounds it has can be helpful. Of course, you can also look at the IPA and see that we have the diphthong I and the D sound. But I think for most people, knowing that I'd is the same as I'd can be very helpful. So thinking about that. And then you'd, I've just rewritten that for you here with as though it were one word, you'd. Because what I hear sometimes is that rather than saying you'd have to call her, you'd better do that, you'd like it, that people tend to, even when they're trying to contract, a little bit of the w might sneak in there. You would, instead of just you'd like it. Then same for he'd, it's the same as this word, he'd have to do that, he'd like to be there, he'd tell you if he knew, etc. She'd, same as he'd, just with a sh instead of a sound. She'd be happy to, she'd tell you if she knew, she'd like that. And then now we're going to get into some contractions that we may or may not use in writing. We do contract everything in writing as well as this, but for iddid and thaddid, we may or may not contract those in writing. So for iddid, this is a tricky one to pronounce because there's no vowels here. So I've rewritten it for you with the sounds. We have a flap T, which I've rewritten as two Ds, iddid, iddid. Thinking about it'd be nice if you could call me, it'd be great, it'd be too hot, it'd be wonderful. When you visualize it as iddid, that can be really helpful, and we really would rarely say it would be wonderful. We tend to reserve that for it would be, but when we're kind of changing the meaning and highlighting the word would. Then going to weed, it's the same as weed that grows in the garden. We'd like to, we'd love to, we'd be there if we could, etc. They'd has the A diphthong. So I've rewritten this like the word paid, but with the TH, they'd tell you if they knew, they'd love that, they'd listen better if they weren't so tired, etc. And then finally, thaddid is a little bit like iddid, where we have the same combination of a flap, which I've rewritten as two Ds, and the id sound. So that'd be great, that'd be wonderful, that'd be helpful, that'd be special, etc. So you see how, as I went through, first I was saying just the words by themselves, and then immediately trying to put them into some short everyday phrases. You can listen to this video again, pause, imitate, do the same phrases that I did, or you can come up with your own phrases. Just start with I'd like, I'd have to, I'd need. Put it together with other common verbs, because we definitely contract when we have multiple verbs rather than I would need to tell you. I'd need to tell you. I'd need to. And to make it easier, you can pick one or two. Maybe just start with I'd or start with iddid and thaddid. Try to practice those and use them so that it feels natural to you to use those contractions. And what you'll find is that as you start to use them more, you'll listen around you to other native speakers and you'll hear that, yes, they really do use these contractions. If you're not somewhere where you can listen to native speakers and talk to them in conversation, use TV and movies to listen for how people say these words and imitate what you're hearing there so that it feels natural and correct to you. If you have trouble with the grammar, you can always in your mind think about how I would use would, it would be, and those types of phrases, and then translate into using I'd, he'd, she'd, iddid, etc. I hope this lesson is helpful for you in using contractions. It is really a crucial part of sounding like a native speaker, being more fluent, being more natural when you're speaking. And in the long run, even if it's difficult initially to begin to use these contractions, the reason that they happen is that it makes our speech more fluent and it's easier to say than using the full words. So even though it might not feel easier to you initially, I hope that this pronunciation guide will help you with this set of contractions for pronouns plus would. I'll be back with future classes talking more about other different contractions that we use. And of course, you can get more details on contractions and connected speech in our online courses on speechmodification.com. I hope you'll check those out and also consider some of our new options for online courses. We're now offering a customized course that can help you with more advanced American accent and some of the things that are personal to you and your needs. So check that out on speechmodification.com. We do have our one-on-one accent training online courses and now our new customized online course that I designed specifically for you and your needs. Thanks so much for watching this video, liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting. All those things really do help support the channel and I appreciate it so much. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.